Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our CuraCore Academy Talks. And it's my pleasure again to introduce you to Hannah Capon. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. And today we're going to discuss flooring and the importance of ensuring good footing, especially for your quadrupeds at home, dogs and cats. But it seems like dogs even more so because they're higher up from the ground a lot of times and slip around more. So, and it can affect more than just animals with arthritis. There's neurologic problems. There's dogs that are vision impaired or hearing impaired, and they need to feel secure where they are. So Hannah, what have you noticed in your work that really stood out to you regarding flooring and floor coverings?
It's really important. That's
Yeah.
To be fair, I think it's my main USP with CAM is the environmental adaptations are just game changers. And there's many incredible people talking about osteoarthritis, chronic pain, rehab. And I guess my little kind of area being just on my rehab journey, I'm just at the beginning, is flooring, guys, flooring. Because when I started bringing in a rehabilitative perspective to being a vet, so I'm a vet, guys, and I'd been a vet for 11, 12 years before I started getting interested in chronic pain. And then I did a clinical massage course and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And adding that to pharmaceutical and, bringing in your weight management and bringing in, chronic adjunct medication and stuff. I set up a little home service and I was going to people's homes, and I originally did it free of charge because I wasn't really sure what I was doing. So I got volunteer owners to let me go to their homes, and very quickly I found myself giving advice about the house, just friendly advice. I was like, "You tripped over that step?" And they're like, "Did he?" I was like, yeah, just tripped over the step. And right. And then they'd like see them stumble down the stairs. I'm like, "Did you not see that?" And they're like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And before I knew it, I was giving people house advice, which wasn't the intention at all, because it was just so common sense. And then we took that advice and put it on Facebook, and that's how CAM was born,
Right.
through our advice. And flooring was just a big part of that. The amount of owners, like I'd say, 95% of owners have slippery floors. That's be lino, be it laminate, be it tiles, be it woods. People think it's animal friendly and it's not at all. So it's probably the most common hazard that our dogs face. And we need to mention it in our treatment plans because it has the ability to completely destabilize a treatment plan. Can you imagine this? You're 4 weeks into twice weekly laser and the dog's beginning to do well, and then it slips and it deteriorates and they feel like they've wasted the money. They feel that they're probably not going to bother trying again, or maybe they only just started to see a little bit of improvement and now they don't. So they're like, "Oh, it didn't work." So it's a huge important part of your management plan.
Right, right. Well, and I think too for the diagnostic component, like, or just the history taking component. I mean, we ask what supplements are they on, what drugs are they on, when did this all start? But just the contribution of slippery floors to a back problem or continued issues with hip ligamentous laxity and all that stuff. So if we don't ask about it, then it doesn't come to anybody's awareness and we can't change it. So right at the front end, I think for people that have history forms, that would be a good thing to to say what are things like in your flooring, just like for certain human practitioners, they might ask, how old is your mattress? What kind of mattress do you sleep on? So things that you're exposed to all the time that impact your body.
Usually do. And I was just really lucky. I've just finished interviewing Duncan Lascelles, who's probably pain god of the world.
Yeah.
And what was really lush about the interview is that I said to him, "What do you feel the future holds?" And he says, "I think there's going to be improvements in 3 areas." And I was like, "Okay, tell us what they are." And he was like, "Be improvements in the way that we can monitor, we can identify and monitor and observe and measure pain." I was like, "God, yeah." So accelerometers, wearable devices. there's going to be advancements in pharmaceuticals, which is really exciting. So there's going to be more ways that we can actually hit the pain pathways. Yes. And he went, and I think we're going to have a greater understanding about other ways we can influence pain, such as their demeanor, reducing their anxiety, improving sleep. And I was like, yes. But what's really interesting is that a big cohort of people have been talking about this for years already. You know, Amber Batson is the sleep guru, as far as I'm concerned. And she's been lecturing about the importance of sleep and pain for a long time. So it's funny that you've got all these different excellent areas of pain management. They go, oh, what are each other up to? But yes, so back to the point. If you've got a hazardous environment and it's going to create anxiety and fear, these are going to be negative emotional states, which is going to make the pain worse. So that's one aspect. The next aspect is it's going to be hazardous. So you are likely to have trauma. And the trauma could be microscopic in repetitive slips. So they're just going to place and they lose it, place it, lose it, place it, lose it. So you've got microscopic trauma that's leading to macroscopic, or you're going to have outright macroscopic trauma with falls, and they're going to land heavy, and they're not going to have the power, the agility, and the stability to correct that. So it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. That's why we say more rugs, less drugs.
I like that.
This is something else. I was going to be really facetious. I have a doll's rug.
Oh, yeah.
And I was going to wrap it up and put it in a little medical box, you know, like a little pill pot. I was going to give it to owners to go, there you go, there you go.
I love that.
But I realised that people might be offended. But I found it really funny. I prescribed you a rug. How do you feel about it?
Right. Here's a sample. No, that's great. And yeah, and just reading, well, it's about different people's I was going to say stakeholders, but that's weird to talk about in a home, but just reading a little bit about flooring and all that well, caregivers, yeah. With flooring, like that some sites recommend against carpeting. I mean, I like rugs, little things that you can wash and vacuum and everything. I think over time, carpets can be an issue, especially if there's, you know, inappropriate urination or things that accrue in carpet. But rugs, little area rugs or rugs that you can get cleaned or just clean well, I think is a real improvement. And laminate is like one of the worst in terms of traction and all that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I say I have on occasion used a slightly more heavy-handed approach. So let me tell you a story.
Sure.
I had a guy with a black elderly Labrador, and obviously the diagnosis of OA and significant pain was a total shock to him. He knew something was wrong, but when I described what I found, he was absolutely heartbroken. And his dog was his life. Yeah, everything about the dog catered for. But he'd moved into a bungalow for the dog. It was a bungalow for the dog. And he'd made it beautiful. And he had just laid down a parquet flooring, $3,500 parquet flooring. And I went, well, so you're going to need to get some rugs and some runners. He went, oh, I can't, excuse me. No, I've just had that floor put down. You know, it's $3,500. It's just been furnished. And you're like, okay, just said to me that you'll do anything for you're not going to put a rug down. Are you for real? But you really have to show owners. And so what I ended up doing is collecting video clips, and a really good video clip of an overweight pug without clinical problems, according to the owner, walking across a laminate floor, and you just see its back foot never having full traction. It places weight and it slips away. But the dog just gets on with it, because what's he going to do? It's got to get on with it, hasn't it? But I've got an array of clips from that all the way through to a dog that sat in a doorway that won't go on it. Yeah. I'm not going on it.
Right.
You know, you do have to give them kind of a visual. You have to explain it. And it is really worth learning some lingo of why they struggle. So they're weak, they've lost agility and power to correct any slips and trips, but they've also lost these proprioceptive capabilities. So their placement is likely to be poor. So they're going to weight bear, they're going to transfer weight onto that limb in a slightly wrong position. So it's more likely to slip, and they've not got the ability to bring it back. So that's going to pull some soft tissue, and you're just going to magnify the pain. And owners start going, okay, yeah, I get that. But if you just say, put rugs down the window.
Yeah. Right. Well, and then like from my osteopathic background perspective, then it's not only the feet and maybe the hips, but it comes back to the back too and the neck. And so they're kind of walking like this. They've learned to keep themselves together really stiffly. But that's no good. That's not healthful. And just worsens all kinds of things. So but from a palpation perspective, I think especially dogs with hip problems and they have ligamentous laxity in that coxofemoral joint, that they're slipping. I mean, maybe that pug too, they're slipping out like that. And so they hyperactivate the internal muscles, the gracilis and the adductors. And so when we're doing our palpation exam, one of the things I alert my students to is that you can find tenderness to palpation in that medial thigh region because they're using those so much. And then also in the front limbs, oftentimes like the pectoral region is really tight because again they're holding everything and
they're
trying
just
to
holding
work
it
with
together.
it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I also found another phrase that I say quite a lot is I'll say, when people say that they've put their back out and people go, yeah, yeah. And you're like, well, that's muscular in the big majority of cases. And they're like, yeah, I thought it was like disc. I'm like, no.
Right.
Most often it's muscular. And they're like, right. And I said, so they've got an underlying problem and they've got therefore really, really tense muscles that have been guarding that area. So they've got, maybe it's poor posture over time like mine, or it might be they have got something grumbling, but the muscles are, and then they slip or they pick something up from the floor and they're like, they pull a muscle, and that's excruciating pain that have people laid up on, doctor says, don't move for a week, take some paracetamol, heat sack yourself. I'm like, that's happening to your dog. Think of people really assume that the pain state, if it's worsening, it must be related to the joint disease. They find it hard to look at the bigger picture. So you do have to educate. And we have tools to help. So anybody that uses the CAM website, there's a tool there called It's My Home Too. So hashtag It's My Home Too. And it's 17 questions that really start trying to get the owner to see the obstacles in their dog's environment. And you can either use it online, and it's got lots of pictures to guide you because owner's visual, or you can print it off as a PDF and you can hand it out to them. It's not got so many pictures because it's too expensive on the ink, but it's available for you guys.
That's wonderful, because I think that again, with this not being something that most veterinary students learn in school, then to come up with the questions. I mean, it would be a good learning experience even for veterinary professionals to go to your website. And Canine Arthritis Management is CAM, and that's what you head up, and that's why we're doing this talk.
Yeah, you'll be pleased to know we train final year at vet schools now. So I did Glasgow on Monday. We've done Liverpool, Edinburgh, and Glasgow. We're looking for contacts abroad. If anybody has any connections to universities over in Canada and America, with people, we can do it. But yeah, we're bringing this kind of information to the final year vet students so that they go out much better equipped.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what does the program look like? I'm just curious with the veterinary school.
It's a 9 to 5. I talk from 9 to 5. Basically we start talking about pain and understanding much more about the pain pathway, understanding about pain being a perception and therefore how the emotional and the cognitive component fits in, so that vet students will expand their mind to give much more multimodal advice. But we go into what causes OA, we talk about how the drugs work, we talk about lifestyle, we talk about where all the complementary therapies, integrative therapies fit in. We talk about nutraceuticals, it's a big day. It's rammed.
That's amazing. That's great. Yeah, well, I'll pass the word around for US vet
It's
schools.
fun. I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. It's exhausting, but
Yeah.
we get to laugh because I'm not a tutor. I'm not one of their tutors. I can be outrageous, and
Yeah, right. Right.
so they're like, "Oh my god, did she just say that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm not in your staff."
That's great. Yeah. And speaking about the vet schools, then I think our vet teaching hospitals and even the clinical hospitals, how you build a clinic should
Mm.
include consideration of the flooring. I mean, and as a model for the clients. And
Mm.
I know when I taught at Colorado State University that those the janitorial staff at in the evening, because I would usually do my acupuncture treatments after hours when it was calm, but they would polish the floors for hours, you know, and there was one small hallway that seemed to have more of a rubberized flooring, and that was when they were doing neuro exams or something. But these poor dogs, they'd try to hug against the wall so they wouldn't slip, and people just didn't understand. But here's the students are learning, yeah, this is how to keep a clean place. And so since then they've changed some of the tile, but it's still tile. But I think, I mean, how do you keep it the cleanest possible without having enormous laundry bills um, from little, area rugs and things?
Mats, rubber walkways really
Oh yeah,
aren't.
true.
I think we over here have exactly the same. But there are vets that are realizing this, and they're either going for low cost adaptations, which would be buy a load of yoga mats, cut them in half, roll them up, and have them in the waiting room so that at least that dog's got traction in transitions.
Yes.
And then he can lay on the mat and at least he can get up. It's just a little bit in the right direction. They should be available in every consult room. There should be rubber mats in the consult room. Personally, I don't use the table anymore. I push the
Yeah.
table and I work on the floor. In every kennel, it should have rubber matting. That dog's vulnerable. They're coming around from a sedation or an anaesthetic. There should be slings available within these. So if you can see that they're going to be a little bit skinny, then get a sling underneath and just support them, stabilize them. You wouldn't put a
Right.
child on a bike that couldn't ride a bike without stabilizers
Right.
in a concrete park, would you? You wouldn't. You just wouldn't do it. So
Right.
why do we think dogs? So I think we can step in the right direction, but we've got a product out of here called Paw Safe. It's a commercial company that's made. They've got a line that's got really good traction in it. It's they sent me a sample and I did yoga in fluffy socks on it, and I was pretty solid on it. It was okay. So some vet practice have looked into now using that instead of going for shiny, shiny, shiny.
Right.
And it's noticed. Let me tell you a little ditty. Polly's Army, which is our community group, it's got 10,000, nearly 11,000 owners on it now. And there was a dog training program on national TV this week. And this dog trainer, he's one of them. I know everything.
Right.
Anyway, the dog was not wanting to get off the sofa and he wasn't wanting to walk. And the man said, "What a diva, just pull her." And the dog obviously struggling. You could see posture change, physical changes. Holly's Army, these educated owners, I went crazy. It went crazy. Oh my God, he should get struck off. The BBC should not put things on there. Can't he see? It's blinking obvious. The dog is scared of the floor. And the message is getting out there. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that?
Into the trap of not doing anything. So if you've got owners need to be aware and you completely don't acknowledge it, they'll notice.
Right. Yeah, I used to have this recurring dream. It's been a long time now, but that I was wearing high heels, which I really never ever did, but just for maybe the one time of trying it on. And just I couldn't get traction. I was trying to walk on a floor and I was just slipping all over the place. It was really scary. Yeah, and that's what these.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you talk to a lot of behaviorists and they're very aware of it because it's added to that deep-seated kind of negatively aroused state that so many other behaviors worsen through. So, it doesn't have just physical effects, it has emotional and cognitive effects.
Well, and definitely, and then if the person is modeling a trainer like that domineering individual that you just mentioned, then
Mm,
they're like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to poll them. I'm supposed to say, don't be a weenie or whatever. Um, and
mm,
and they don't understand. So yeah, I just can't stand that level of ignorance. Um, but yeah.
no.
Mhm.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because we have a little group, a bit like you. So we've got a Facebook group called Cam Advocate, and anybody that's done the Cam Advocate course can go in and they can share ideas, seek advice, just vent, and actually it's an area where people can vent about what they're seeing or how they're having to work with maybe other allied professionals that don't have their understanding and how hard it is. And one lady, she'd come on to vent about exactly that. How can people not see the signs of pain and distress? But some people don't, sadly. And I ended up saying, we've got to be grateful for what we do have, in that we've got definitely a movement towards people that do understand it now. There's a collective, the volume of us is growing. One of my inspirations is a lady called Sarah Heath, and she got into clinical behavior 30 years ago. And that was when non-steroidals weren't prevalent. That was primitive analgesics weren't even available. And she's talking to vets that don't even believe in pain relief.
In
That
this
dogs
day
and
and age. Yeah.
yeah. And so if she can do it, we can do it. Come on.
Right, 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 right. Well, and I think,
If she's stuck with it,
yeah. Well, and as you've done with Holly's Army, that a tremendous resource, is this grassroots people, dog lovers, just animal lovers. I mean, that's where you have the numbers, and so many changes have come out of that. I mean, of course, in the US, there's cannabis. I mean, that's literally a grassroots thing, but changing like formulations of animal food, the diets, and becoming less, gross and more natural and having more inclusion. So the pressure does work, and I think even having taught at vet schools for a long time, uh, I mean, if they didn't, if you're in a closed system and not exposed to these new ideas, then you just keep on teaching the things that you were taught. And so I just love what's happening nowadays, uh, with the more awareness from practitioners and people, caregivers. One thing that, yeah, I've been seeing a lot of lately is that when people are coming through our acupuncture or rehab programs and they finally start doing the myofascial examinations in their clinic, and like one of my things is you don't have to cause pain to find pain. And I talk about orthopedic
mm,
exams and how you can do that without making the animal scream, and that we don't force their necks around to
mm,
see when they're going to yell out. And when that sinks in, I mean, it's very clear. And when we do maybe a live session like this, they're like, I feel so bad about the number of years I have done that to animals. So, I mean, it's a beautiful awakening, but they do kind of have to reckon with what their past, and they didn't know. I mean, and that's where you going into vet schools, you're saving all of those
I didn't
students.
know.
Yeah.
I was looking at videos of my own dog, and my interest in pain management, and oh my god, I've got so much to learn. I am so at the beginning. But my knowledge back then was even less. And I look at the way I picked her up, I look at the way I handled her, the fact that I kicked her football, I threw stones on the beach. I just wasn't aware. So I just want to make sure that any information that we put out there comes with kindness, because there's two different kinds of like ignorance. There's ignorance, and there's just ignorance,
Yeah.
where people didn't know, and they're actually really good people. So we have to put it out in a really kind way, and in many ways it has to come out in a very passive way. So that's why we have these tools and they're well branded. We know that people buy into branding. They get confidence. If there's a continuity of color scheme, font, the layout, you know it with your own branding, it gives people reassurance. But it's a gift. It's being given for people to take in their own time. We're not forcing it. We're not telling them. So that's just another tip. Passive giving of information and letting people kind of figure it out is quite a nice way as well. Or you go for the proper blunt, which is what I've had to do sometimes, is you'll get used to the sight of rugs, but you won't get used to the loss of your dog. And I've said that probably about 2 or 3 times.
Wow, that's great.
Because it's true. Put those rugs down for a period of time and they just become part of the furniture. They're there, aren't they?
Oh,
but the heartbreak will stay with you.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. I know. So my mother had lived at my house for a period of time, and the area where she lived, I did have it's wood look porcelain tile, so it has some traction to it. But I don't have dogs. I have cats, and they do pretty well. But her thing was little rugs that she would put around for her cat. And I mean, in my living area, I had like bigger Oriental rugs and stuff, but she would do these little rugs, and it wasn't really my color scheme. And so then she broke her, she fractured her pelvis because she just kind of felt faint, and she went down on my hard porcelain tile and fractured her pelvis, and then went to rehab, and then is now in a nursing home, and she's doing well, and she walks around. She's like that most highly functioning person there. But still, so number one, the hard floor was not good for her. But so I think there is, like, when you have an older person in the house, and if they would be in a wheelchair, then that's probably something that you can discuss or whatever. But anyway, so when she moved out, then I took out all the little rugs, and I just had it bare for a while. And then I thought, you know what, the floor is pretty cold. And so now I have almost every bit of that area covered with these very colorful area rugs that I can put into the washing machine. Like, so there's multiples. They're all like, it's almost like a full carpeting, but I can pull up each piece and wash it. And I got this company that makes these great colors. And so I have one room with like a deep purple, and then I have kind of like a coral, like that color, or, it's just a really pretty orangey pinkish, and then a really nice teal or blue green. I mean, it's just so much fun. And they feel great to walk on. It's not just the usual sort of bathroom mat rug kind of thing, but they have these little loops. It's a great company. They have a rubber backing, and I'm just enamored with it. And it just changes the color. It changes the feel.
Yeah, you have to be very positive about it. And kind of gives them all the pros. So in my house, I ended up having roll-up runners. So it was more of like the Hessian-y, kind of hempy, kind of woven. But the good thing about that is when I'd go and stay with my parents, I could roll some of them up and I could take them with me because they had wooden floors everywhere. And sometimes you'll say something like that to an owner, that's a good idea. And if you've got an owner that's got maybe somebody that is like a high-risk trip hazard, well, we can't have rugs down, you can say, well, we could have rubber backed, just doormats. And you can get these ones that are very thin, and it is like a doormat, so very wafer thin, and it's got a kind of rubber edge, and it goes on a roll, and you can have lengths of it, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. So it sounds daft, but you have to be ready to coach. It's counselling. At the end of the day, it's counselling. Don't give up is what I'm trying to say. I, at one point, used to carry samples with me. People could actually kind of go, oh, I didn't realize there was so much choice. There's a company over here that has where you rip the top of the rug off and the base layer stays down. So it's a thin thing that you can fold up and put in the washing machine, and then you lay it back down and it sticks. So that's really good as well. But I think I just want to stress that it makes a difference. So I'll tell you a story about a little dog. She was called Millie Lats. They were South African, and they I went in, it was a white terrier, and I couldn't touch them. It was so painful, couldn't touch it. And so they're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with my time? I've got to give them value for my service. So we did a house inspection. And as we were doing house inspection, it came out that the dog had a thing for pigeons. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What do you mean, a thing for pigeons? She said, well, you would never think she was in pain because she runs from one side of the house to the other and she smashes into this glass door trying to get the pigeons at the end of the garden. I'm like, right. Did you ever think to stop that? But because they could, why would a dog ever do that when they were in pain? Why would they do that? Because it will create pain. It's much more complex than that. But what we ended up doing is I spoke to them about pain. I spoke to them about how dogs live in the now and other neurochemicals. And I persuaded them to put some translucent glass at the base of the door so they couldn't see what was on the lawn. And we put runners, rubber-back runners around the house. And we just fenced off her having this high-speed pathway. Within 3 weeks, full body massage. So it was that behavior was driving the pain state. Her emotional state, she was getting more angry at the pigeons because when she hit the glass, she was like, that hurts. You pigeons are at fault. I'm going to really tell you off. I'm going to tell you to go away properly next time. Smash even harder. So you got to just be kind of a little bit of a detective.
Yeah. And maybe if the floors were slippery also, she couldn't brace herself and stop that easily.
Yeah.
And even though I mentioned cats and that they are lower to the ground, but the flooring still is an issue because number one, if we're playing, whether it's with a little penlight laser or a little toy or whatever, they want to be on the rugs. So like on my, let's say a 9x12 rug that I have. And if I go over to the side, they wait till it comes back to the rug because they don't want to go on the ceramic tile. So that's one thing. And then there's when they do what I call crazy cat and they just go berserk and run and meow and go the zoomies or whatever people call it. But if they do hit a patch of floor, then they're like, shh. And that's not good for them. And so it does affect cats too. I definitely know that. But when I have done house calls in places with a lot of dogs, I mean, so it's a different quality there where there's just a bunch of them and they might knock into each other and there's like more mayhem and then they might go up the stairs and get knocked around. So I think it's amplified, especially if there's like then the doorbell rings and they're all running and barking and everything. And yeah, there's a lot of mayhem, but what are the consequences if they're slipping around there? And there are consequences. It's like for one person to slip on the ice for a second as you're going out to your car or something, it's like, oh, that was scary. Well, what if that's your reality all day long?
I agree, 100% agree. I just think that we need to realize that, there might start to be a bit of antagonism in multi-dog households. And you're like, well, where did this start from? Was it because there's an underlying pain state and the dog slipped and he bumped into his fellow housemate at the same time that he slipped and he hurt himself? And now he relates that his hurt is that dog's cause. And you just sit there going, oh my God, this is huge. This is huge. And let's even think about, could it cause OA?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. I agree. Good point. I mean, with stretching the ligaments continually and changing the ability of the muscles to keep that joint solid, definitely. And then another thing that I've noticed in practice is that if there is a dog for whatever number of reasons, and they do have some kind of a back problem and maybe spinal issue, maybe neurologic, like spinal cord, disc disease or whatever, then they can, like with your book, that they can start to be proactively standoffish and maybe even snap at one of the other animals to like stay away from me. And just seems like they know that they are vulnerable and they don't want to be knocked into.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we definitely haven't captured the academic, more kind of specialist about could flooring affect development, because we're still very, very in the mindset that OA specifically is a developmental joint disease. It's more genetic, it's more dietary related, etc. But I really can't believe that we're not going to collect evidence over the next decade going to, well, there's a huge environmental component, because, you know, the joint, yes, is its formation, its morphology is going to be very genetically driven, but there are going to be outside influences that is going to affect the modeling. And if we've got abnormal joints, we're going to get away. So, yeah, nail
Right.
care. If we're talking about nail care, you know, how
Oh,
that
yeah.
posture and therefore it can lead to problems, then certainly flooring can.
Right. And the interaction between the two.
Oh God, awful. Can you imagine? Like, have you ever worn shoes where your toe is touching the toe of the shoe? So every time you place your foot, you just get a nudge, just a nudge. And it starts off, you go out wearing those shoes as a lady that because they match the outfits, and you're like, oh, I can put up with the slight discomfort. They're only tight. And you're at a wedding or something, and within an hour, you're like, Jesus.
Right. Right.
You know, that little nudge, 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 nudge eventually becomes quite, oh my God. And if that's a nail, hit the floor, hit the floor. Can
Yeah.
you imagine how tender feet should become?
Well, right. And then the compensatory thing is if their nails are too long, then they start bending backwards like the, so hyperextending. And then that's going
Yeah.
to put a strain on the muscles, various muscles in various ways. It's going to impact their posture and of course their steadiness and all that. Yeah.
And it's so sad. I work in first opinion practice, and a good percentage of adult and senior dogs have overgrown nails. And you sit there going, this is such a battle to fight. They don't understand. And I had a friend who had a housemate, a lovely Vizsla, who really overgrown nails, like really awful.
Wow.
And they had wood claws, and the dog was often very vacant and behaved quite strangely. And they were like, oh, she's just a bit weird in the head. And I was like, she's in pain and she doesn't know what to do with herself. You know, she'd go and kind of like hang out by the wall. But they wouldn't take it on board. They said, oh, she doesn't like her claws being clipped, so I'm just not going to put her through it. And I was like, well, you can sedate her. Yeah, sedate. I'm done. So claws is is a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if there was some kind of a service that went around to people's houses. Like, I don't know if vet techs could practice on their own in the UK and do that.
No, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. I think, I think just we need education there to kind of get to start handling the feet and cutting nails at a very young age, making it a really positive experience. Appropriate implements so it doesn't actually hurt, because it must hurt when you actually cut the nail. There's a pinching of the quick. There's always going to be a pinch of the quick because you're compressing the nail as you cut it, unless you're using a Dremel. Anyway, I could go on.
Yeah.
The thing is, my brain just kind of goes.
Yeah. Well, and that's how it is. But yeah, with nails, I think too that, I mean, there's a torque on there too, because there's this extension. So it gets to that digit, and then it happens with cats too, and their claws can start to grow into their pads, and that's a real bad thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So much to do. We've just got so much to do. We've all got to collectively kind of take areas. I know my area, I said my USP is the home environment, and Cam battles with that one. Yes, we help with medication and nutrition. We try and do everything to do with OA, but our real shouting message is anybody of any financial background, any physical backgrounds can improve the environment. Just understand it and you can start making adaptations. You take the rug that was underneath the dining room table, you pull it to where the park is. You know, we put rugs under coffee tables. You can't get to the rug. Why is it there? It's stupid. Right. So you just have to kind of like spartanly kind of go, shower target from her. They've always got them in the attic. There's always a rug in there.
Yeah. Well, and
that's the area that counts.
Right. Well, and I think still it's a learning opportunity for people. And if you brought that rug out from under the dining room table, then the kids would pile on it too. And I mean, everybody could enjoy it more. And the animals would congregate there. Yeah, it's just a shift, just like in a hospital, going from clinic centered and maybe bottom line centered to patient centered, and and instead of just home beautiful according to what somebody told you it should be, this is family beautiful, where we're all thinking of each other's needs, and people would, um they would like it too. I mean, I think most of the things
I think you've hit a really relevant. I think you've hit a really relevant point there, and that we really try and be cognizant of the biopsychosocial point, or the other is called contextual consulting, where you actually you open your eyes and you widen your field of view. It's not just the dog in, it's the owner, it's the family members, it's the house, it's the car, and you widen your view. And biopsychosocial, really using that terminology, makes you try and get into the owner's head. And if you think about it, pressure on society now to be of a certain ilk, you've got to have the feng shui look, you've got to have this minimal, clinical, clean, and the pressures of social acceptance and striving to be something that you see on Instagram is huge. I feel sorry for the generations that are coming. So you've got that to kind of overcome. They've got this social house that they feel demonstrates their personality and who they are and their stature and where they belong in society. And you just told them to cover it up, cover it with rugs.
Yeah.
This is disturbing my mental space. This makes me happy. It makes me look like I'm successful. And if I look successful, I can fit in with these people. I can fit in with myself. I can be happy with myself. So be kind is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It applies across the board. So yeah,
we've got a weird world at the moment. It's going to get worse for a while, I think.
We do. Yeah. But maybe there'll be a renaissance of comfort and I don't know, just kindness, and like you're saying, and we'll see. Wow.
Maybe we should start a rebellion.
Sure. Well, I think we already are rebelling, but
I'm on a rebellion. I've stepped away from aesthetically pleasing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But yeah, there is, I mean, just, and this is a bit off topic, but I think the unspoken pressure and the immersive, like you're saying, social media thing that we don't even critique necessarily, or it's easy to just be inundated with these things. These are the standards, but it's so freeing to say no, and to rebel, and be individualistic. And it kind of just, that takes nurturing too, because you're going against the grain, but it's well worth it.
It really is, but I think it also applies to so much, is the choice of the dog. People choose breed because of the social group that they may want to remain or frequent. And you look at the cars people drive, these high cars that they have to jump in, and they see on the adverts, that it'll be a dog food advert on TV, national TV, and the dog leaps out the car. And there's a sign of that it's healthy and active and athletically amazing, and they're just letting the dog, and their dog flops out of the car. And you're like, you can't carry it.
Right.
No, adverts, they let them jump out. So you're like, there's so much pressure around us to conform or be something. So I think, rather than me going into the massive psychology, which I happen to love, I'm trying to say be kind. It's taken us a long time to get to the thought process that we have, through all the enlightenments that we've had and all the lessons and the learning and the teaching and the opinions that we've been absorbing for years to get to where we are now. They haven't.
Right.
At the beginning. So yes, don't lose your cool. Don't get exasperated. Don't get impatient. Just keep trying, because I promise you, I swear to God, it makes such a difference to your treatment plan.
Right. Well, how about if we just review the where your website is and Facebook group and all that, because that can save people a lot of time and just get right into the learning right away.
Yeah. So you can find Canine Arthritis Management at www.caninearthritis.co.uk, and that's CANINEARTHRITIS. Big tip, guys, if you're passing on the website address, spell it for them, because a lot of them do K9.
Oh.
People don't actually know how to spell arthritis, believe it or not.
Hmm.
So from there, you will be able to access all of our social media, because we're on Facebook in a number of places. Facebook, we've got the main page, we've got Holly's Army, we've got the equipment review page, we've got Cam Advocates, there's a few more groups. Then we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. You'll find 400 videos on YouTube now. There's a lot. So we interview a expert. Nada's been on twice. Every week, and we've been doing it since about 2017, 2018. So if you're wanting to up your CPD, you will find so much on there. We do practice training, so we come in and we'll train a practice. We can do vets, nurses, and receptionists. We do it online. Did one this weekend for a practice in Yorkshire. So I train receptionists and nurses and vets in a very clever little way with breakout rooms and stuff. We do owner courses online. So there's recorded owner courses. So if you're really struggling with an owner, but they quite like to find out more information, let me do the talking for you. It's 12 short modules. It's 20 quid. So that's what, about $28?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So there's the owner courses, and also there's recorded courses for professionals. So if you're a dog trainer, dog walker, if you've got people that you're working with and they don't quite understand, you maybe have got an assistant, or you've got people doing agility and you're like, come on, get it. You can put Cam Advocate course. So we try and cover all bases. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot. And so what do you hear, like, from a practice, if you talk to them in 6 months or a year after you've been there, what kinds of things do they tell you?
Well, at the moment, here in the UK, we've got a horrendous staffing situation, and there's a huge flux of vets and vet nurses actually leaving the profession, changing jobs. So we've learned our lesson. We've trained practices, and they've been really engaged. And we even had one practice go, well, do you know what? Our non-steroidal sales have gone up by it was 19%. Our food sales have gone up 50%. Our attendance to OA clinics has gone up 50%. That was within a month. Fizzles out. So we now offer a coaching package. So after they've done a training, I see them at the 2 weeks point, 6 week, the 10 week, and 6 months. And I've just got a group of practices. We're on 10 week, and I had a meeting this week, and they're like, we've done this, we've done that. And I'm like, whereas if they didn't have that coaching, I think it would fizzle and they'd go back to bad habits.
Yeah. Well, and I would bet that that's a similar schedule to when you're educating clients about new approaches, or you're implementing some kind of integrative therapy or other, that you want to see them and just do these check-ins and just get them used to this new way, so it's more deeply ingrained.
Yeah, 100%. And what do they say? You've got to see it, hear it, do it, or something.
Yeah.
I think all of these old wives' phrases really illustrate that for decades, for millennia, we've struggled to get people to change habits. Habits are really hard to break. It's like it would be easier to push a boulder from standstill than trying to have the boulder coming towards you and you push it. And that's what you're doing with people that have routines and habits. The boulder is coming at you, guys. You have to stop it first, and you got to then push. That is hard work. So don't expect people to just buy into it instantly. It's going to take repetition.
Yeah. Well, and then I just had an image of one person trying to stop that boulder, but then if you have your army and everybody's there, that just I just think that what you're building is making so much of a difference. Even the practitioners, even the army members, their lives are probably happier too.
Yeah, well, what's cool is within Holly's Army, we've got a group of dog owners and canine professionals. There's about 30 to 40 that have had private training from me and the team, so that they are very enlightened owners, but they're still peer-to-peer. That they're an owner talking to an owner, and there's definitely a really big opportunity to impart information, because there's no white coat effect. They're not being told off, because it's owner to owner. And it's a really good place for vicarious learning. We have a lot of people that maybe they've lost their dog and they will pipe up and go, well, I've just said goodbye to Benji, and I've loved being in this group for the last couple of years. You've never seen me, but I've listened to every word you've said, so thank you. So if you're struggling, pushing your owner into a forum situations that's supervised is another to kind of get a passive offloading of information.
Right. Well, and I think that thread of kindness and acceptance and encouragement makes it a warm environment, so that they can feel safe there as well.
Yeah, really is. Like, we really don't let any product recommendations. If somebody is spouting something that's got no evidence base, we're like, come on, no. We even the ambassadors, they will do a little bit of research into who the person was, and we've found companies who are portraying themselves as an owner to recommend their products. And the canvas is like, they've mentioned that a couple of times. Let's just go and find out who they are. And they just hunt them down on Facebook, and they're like, actually, that person works for that company. And you're like, oh, don't mess with the ambassadors.
Right.
They'll dig you out.
No, that's good. And that just improves that level of confidence and security and trust in the group.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
All right. Well, good. Well, I hope that we can enlighten some people's minds about flooring and other issues when we put this out. Yeah. Thank you for joining me again. It's always wonderful to see you.
It's always wonderful to see you too.
Thank you.
Take care, Nada.
All right. You too, Hannah.